Good morning, church.
Good morning.
Every time we used to play football, Boone High School would come up against the Blue Devils out of Winter Haven. We'd have a perfect season until we come to Winter Haven, and then they'd whoop us. You know, it was always homecoming, they'd whoop us. But those are the things, we'd almost go to state. We never gave up. We but we played this big school down in Miami called Miami Edison. And they were one of these big, huge schools that had all kinds of monster football players. And so they'd always whoop up on us, and they'd always beat us. But we'd almost go to state, but we'd never give up. I remember one time we had some linebackers. It was all 250-pounders. We had 3 or 4 of those guys. That was one of the golden years of Boone High School history. But we had a good football team. I think they still do have a good football team. But those were the golden days. Back in World War II, there was an 80-year-old politician. More than a politician, he was more of a statesman. His name was Winston Churchill. He was a hot-tempered in his youth and impetuous. He jumped and looked for a place to land. Yet as he reached his golden years of 80, Morty, he reached a certain level of maturity and leadership where he actually reached his prime at the age of 80. That's when he became Prime Minister of England, and he was most effective. So, and you always remember Winston Churchill like this, and a big old cigar in his mouth. I suppose if he didn't have the cigar in his mouth, he'd live to be 100. But George Burns will tell you that. He'll live to be 99. If you didn't have that stupid stogie, you'd live to be 110. But they'll learn you anyway. But interesting thing about Winston Churchill, it was at a school. Next slide, Sylvia. It was at a school that the reporters were going to grasp every word he had to say, and they had the cameras almost set up and ready to get on this thing, and he got up and said, "Never give up! Never, 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 never," and he sat down. And that was a message? That was a message. Any more? Nothing a whole lot more. Well, similarly here, October 29th, 1941, this was at the Harrow School. It was after the Blitz and things were looking up for Britain. And here in the relevant part of his speech, everyone had gone through a tough period. And Winston Churchill said, "I'm addressing myself to the school. Surely from this period of 10 months, this is the lesson, never give in, never give in, never, 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 never. In nothing great or small, large or petty. Never give in except to the convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy." It was that same Winston Churchill who gave a token of appreciation to the beardless warriors, he called them. Some of the young men, the 1,000 pilots of the Spitfire plane. The Spitfire plane could fly about 30 or 40 miles an hour, a little bit faster. You wouldn't think 30, 40 miles make a difference to you on a go-kart track then. And when you're on a go-kart track, if yours could go 1 mile faster than the others, you can pass them. It makes a difference. But those Spitfires could fly about 30 or 40, and the Brits had developed radar. And the Germans hadn't known. They'd fly right over the radar towers and not know that's what they were. And that was their mistake, because they could scramble the 1,000 jets anytime the Germans would come in with a bombing run. And they would amass because they had forewarning. But Winston Churchill did say that never in the history of England was so much owed by so many to so few. And of course they were called these young 18, 19, 20, 22-year-old pilots, the beardless warriors. And these boys never gave up. Never gave up. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians, next slide, Sylvia, and the next one. Next one. 1 Corinthians 15:58 says this, "Therefore, my dear brothers, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain." Next slide. We have one man of renown. His name is Dr. C.E. Welsh, founder of Welsh's Grape Juice Company. Mr. Welsh had this to say, "Many men fail because they quit too soon. They lose faith when the signs are against them. They do not have the courage to hold on, to keep fighting in spite of that which seems unsurmountable. If more of us would strike out and attempt the impossible, we very soon would find the truth of that old saying that nothing is impossible. Abolish fear and you can accomplish anything you wish. Mr. Welsh. Next 2 slides, Sylvia. Now here's, of course, Welsh grape juice, and other brands of Welsh. This is one of the vineyards. And, of course, Welsh is the very, very, very best. But men fail because they quit. Next slide. We have an example of Joshua. He's in Joshua chapter 1, verse 6. It's kind of interesting that Moses, how old was Moses when he took the helm of leadership? How old was he? 80, Morty. I don't know. This sermon was not really directed at Morty, but we got Winston Churchill, a great leader. He began the pinnacle of his career. He reached the apex of his career at age 80. And here you have Moses. He's good hearing, good eyes. God took him, buried him out there on a mountain. He was 80 years old. And he ended up reaching the pinnacle of his career, and then he turned the baton over to a young man by the name of Joshua. Of course, what do we know Joshua? Joshua fit the battle at Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. But Joshua was his right-hand man. He worked shoulder to shoulder with Moses through the years. And Joshua chapter 1, verse 6 says, "Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them." Next slide, Sylvia. Now, Joshua, as a man, was always the second, the left hand, the lieutenant. And you always wonder about the second man. Why in the first man? And usually the first man is always better than the second man. And one guy's always the left-hand man or the right-hand man, but I don't know if you're the left-hand man or right-hand man. But here was the man that was shoulder to shoulder with Moses. He was the one that supported Moses' hands when he held up the rod, when the waters parted and he brought victory against Pharaoh and his armies. But somehow or another, when there's a changing of the guard, you hear and feel this fear and trepidation that, can I be as good as so-and-so? Can I fill his shoes? Am I as good as? Can I be as effective as? In some circumstances in leadership, some folks are too old to cut the mustard, too stubborn to quit, they won't turn loose. And when they don't turn loose, they do more damage than good. There's some times when you need to say, okay, it's time. I was asking one of the professors at Florida Christian College that retired. I said, what do you plan to do? He said, I plan to keep on teaching, but I'm going to be teaching in the church rather than at the college. But he himself felt his memory was slipping, his physical stamina was slipping, and he said, this is the time to hand the baton in. Oftentimes guys get pulled out of retirement, back in the classroom, because the old guard is still there, and the old guard is the faithful. But Joshua was told by God to never give up, be strong and courageous. New Testament example we have in the next slide is based in Acts chapter 27-24. And this is the story of Paul, who Paul was told the same thing. When you look at Paul as being the great leader he was, the great apostle, the great evangelist, the great mover and the shaker, the one who'd come into Corinth and look at a statue and say, I'm going to take this statue, I'm going to make a sermon illustration out of it. I'm going to preach unto you about the unknown God that you worship. And here's that unknown God, the God Jehovah, the God of Israel. But now Paul is on his way to Rome to go before Caesar, who happened to be Nero Caesar at the time. And he appealed to Caesar and he appealed to his Roman citizenship to stand before Caesar. And he's on board a ship, and the ship's going through a tremendous storm. And he warned everybody, God told me in a dream, if you all stay on board the ship, you'll be saved. If you leave the ship, you're going to die. And some of the men were going to take a lifeboat and jump ship. And Paul said, if those guys leave this ship, everybody's going under. Keep them on board. And so the authorities came in and kept them on board. Now, Paul remembered this dream and this vision that he received of God, but God knew that Paul was running through some fear, butterflies in his stomach. he had, now God, I know you said I'm going to stand before Caesar in Rome, but are you sure? The entire boatload was lost. The entire cargo was lost. But not a soul perished in that particular situation. But God came to Paul in a dream and said, don't be afraid, Paul. You're going to stand trial before Caesar, and God graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So even Paul went through this time of fear and trepidation. Next slide we have. This is Paul in the particular shipwreck. And the next slide. The next one we got is an example of a young man by the name of Nick Vujicic. Vujicic. Now these guys had met Nick Vujicic, and he's only about this tall because he has not a leg to stand on. I don't know if he was a thalidomide baby. I knew when we were in college there was a thalidomide scare where a lot of kids were being born without arms, without fingers, without legs, without ears, without different members of their body. And he was born, the only thing he's got is a little old paddle foot hooked up to a stump there near his buttocks, but that's all he's got, a little old flipper foot. Now Nick recently got married, and the gal is not a quadriplegic, and she's not, she's got all four legs, or 2 legs and 2 arms. Yeah, wow. Yeah, she's got to be his legs too, I suppose. Next slide. Next slide, Sylvia. Okay, here's Nick as he's standing on whatever he's got for feet, which is not much. Little flipper. He has absolutely no arms. Next slide. Ben's going to key up this one.
I wasn't ready. I have no arms and no legs, but I'm very thankful that I have a little chicken drumstick head. People freak out when they see me for the first time. It's so cool. I was at a water slide all by myself. Everyone obviously at the bottom of the slide is looking up and waiting for other people to come down. And here I come and they're freaking out. They're like, like this. And I was so tempted to look at myself and go, what happened? There were times where I sort of looked at my life and thinking, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And you keep on concentrating on the things that you wish you had or the things that you wish you didn't have. And you sort of forget what you do have. And there's no point, I believe, in my life where I wish I had arms, legs, I wish I had arms, legs, I wish I had arms, legs, because wishing won't help. But what I've seen in life are just a couple key principles. And the first thing that I've seen is to be thankful. It's hard to be thankful, man. I tell you, when I was 8 years old, I sort of summed up my life and thought, I'm never going to get married. I'm not going to have a job. I'm not going to have a life of purpose. What kind of a husband am I going to be if I can't even hold my wife's hand? It's a lie to think that you're not good enough. It's a lie to think that you're not worth anything. I can't feel my hands. I love, so many people come and say, how come you smile so much? And I'm like, well, it's a long story. But it's very simple at the same time. You see, it's very hard to smile sometimes in life. There are things that happen that you don't know and you don't understand, and you don't know if you're going to get through it. You go through your storms in life and you don't know how long the storm's going to be. And today I want to share with you some principles that I've learned in my life that you can use in yours. Being patient, beautiful. I tell you, it's the hardest thing. But I realize I may not have hands to hold my wife's hand. But when the time comes, I'll be able to hold her heart. I don't need hands to hold her heart. It is scary to know how many girls have eating disorders. It is scary to know how many people are just angry at life because of their situation at home and angry at others. It's scary to know how many people actually feel like they're worth nothing. Every single girl right here, right now, I want you to know that you are beautiful. You are gorgeous just the way you are. And you boys, you're the man.
On this DVD, I share my experiences in life of how I've overcome challenges and seen a new, fresh perspective in life. To be thankful, to dream big, and to never give up. I speak to children, youth, and adults about key issues and principles that I've applied in my life that has given me the strength to conquer all that comes before me.
No arms, no legs, no worries. We get out of bed in the morning and think the blessings that God's given us. We need not take that up for granted. This is Nick surfing, and one gal, she was a shark attack. She was a surfer and lost an arm in a shark, and Nick ministered to her through her loss. He's a New Zealander or Australian. He's got his old south of the down under accent. I guess you can't get rid of that. But Nick recently did get married. This is not the lady he married, but he recently did get married. Ned was telling me a story about how Nick was in a car and they pulled up next to this convertible, a bunch of pretty gals, and he was sitting there in the car. Next thing, he's like this. The eyeballs got big. He's just fooling around. But what a story. Next slide. There are rewards for those who learn to persevere. Perseverance merely means a person learns to fight through the pain and through the challenges and through the discouragement and through the weariness of the battle. The rewards are the accomplishments, the finances, or the goals that would be lost if the person had given up and quit. Next slide. We asked this morning, what challenge is attempting to cause you to quit? What fear is trying to get you to back off from your goals? Or to fight through your pain, or to fight through your discouragements? We challenge you to let new strength fill your being, and your reward is in front of you, and don't quit until you receive it. And don't forget Winston Churchill, who stood up and gave a short message, and then he sat down. Never give up. Never, 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 never.
Just like Morty's song last week, I needed to hear that.
Amen.
We look at just a few challenges our church, a little over a year. I've been working on getting to know Jesus for 16 years, and I've got it out to about 200 ministries around the world and 2, maybe 3 churches in the United States. Long ways from where I envisioned. But I can't quit. I'm kind of like the guy that was going to swim to Catalina Island. It's 26 miles from San Pedro to Catalina Island. He swam about 25 miles and decided he couldn't make it, so he turned around and swam back. I can't turn around. And you've been challenged in your walk with Jesus more than once. Some of you have held true, and some of you have kind of let the world get the best of you. You can't quit. One more day with Jesus. One more day with Jesus, and you'll spend eternity with Jesus. You turn your back on Jesus, and that's the day He comes to call you. You don't want to be there. We're going to have an invitation. Sweet are the promises. And you know those promises. If you study your Bible and attend church and are in Bible study, they come over frequently. Let's all stand, and if you'd like to make a decision for Jesus or join Northside Christian Church, come to the front while we're singing.